You just brought down something enormous, a mammoth maybe, or a bison twice your body weight. Days of tracking, real danger. And now there is more meat lying on the ground than your entire group could possibly eat before it starts to spoil. This is the good outcome. This is what everyone hoped for. But almost immediately, the clock starts ticking. Warmth and moisture give bacteria exactly what they need. Exposed meat begins to deteriorate. The smell can attract hyenas, wolves, and other scavengers perfectly capable of taking the kill away or injuring someone trying to defend it. So killing the animal was only half the problem. The other half was time. Meat rots. Fish rots even faster. Plants have seasons. And for almost all of human history, there was no refrigerator humming in the corner. So what did people actually do when they had more food than they could eat? The obvious answer is fire. But fire introduces an interesting possibility, because cooking food and preserving food are not quite the same thing. Researchers from Tel Aviv University have proposed that some of the earliest uses of fire, between roughly 1.9 million and 800,000 years ago, may have been connected to the problem of large animals. At several early archaeological sites associated with evidence of fire, humans were exploiting elephants and other large game. An elephant represented an enormous concentration of calories, far more than a small group could consume immediately. That created two problems. The meat had to remain edible, and the carcass had to remain theirs. A maintained fire could help with both. Smoke and heat can slow spoilage under the right conditions, while fire may also discourage some scavengers from approaching. This does not prove that humans originally learned to control fire in order to preserve meat. The idea remains a hypothesis, and evidence for controlled fire becomes much clearer later in prehistory. But it changes the question. Maybe one of fire's earliest advantages was not simply making dinner taste better. Maybe it bought time. Hundreds of thousands of years later, at Qesem Cave in what is now Israel, archaeologists found evidence of another solution. And this one did not require preserving the meat itself. It involved preserving what was inside the bones. Animal marrow is extremely rich in fat and calories. Fresh marrow is valuable food, but getting it requires breaking open the bone. At Qesem Cave, researchers studied cut marks on deer limb bones dating to roughly 420,000 to 200,000 years ago. Some of those marks were unusual. They were consistent with skin being removed from the bones after it had dried, rather than immediately after the animal was butchered. Researchers tested the idea experimentally. They stored skin-covered deer bones for weeks under different conditions, then removed the dried skin and compared the marks with the archaeological bones. The patterns matched. The marrow inside could remain nutritionally useful for weeks. That means the bone itself may have worked as a natural container. Instead of cracking every bone immediately after a kill, people could transport some intact limbs back to camp, keep them for later, and open them when fresh food was harder to find. No jar, no can. Just skin, bone, and time. By around 20,000 years ago, we find another glimpse of food preservation at Kharaneh IV, a large hunter-gatherer site in what is now eastern Jordan. Archaeologists there found evidence suggesting that people were doing more than simply killing animals and eating them immediately. Patterns in the animal remains, their treatment, and their distribution around the site are consistent with meat being processed for later consumption. One possibility is drying. Researchers identified post holes that may have supported a small structure such as a drying rack, and the wider archaeological evidence fits with hunter-gatherers preserving meat rather than consuming every part of an animal fresh. Other preservation methods, including smoking, salting, and storing meat in fat, are known from hunter-gatherer practices, and were considered by the researchers as possible ways people could extend the life of meat. The archaeological record cannot tell us exactly which technique was used on every piece of food. That uncertainty matters. But the larger point is much harder to miss. People did not need farms, permanent villages, or refrigerators before food storage became useful. For mobile hunter-gatherers, stored food could actually make movement easier. A strip of dried meat weighs less than the fresh meat it came from. It lasts longer. It can be carried away from a kill site instead of forcing an entire group to remain beside a carcass until it is gone. And preservation solved another problem that hunting could never eliminate: failure. A successful hunt today did not guarantee another one tomorrow. Someone could be injured, herds could move, Weather could make hunting impossible. A group might simply fail to find anything. Fresh meat gives you dinner. Stored meat gives you options. Different environments offer different ways to buy that time. Cold weather naturally slows microbial growth. Dry air helps remove moisture. Smoke exposes food to compounds that inhibit some microbes while also drying its surface. Salt, where people could obtain enough of it, draws water out of food and makes life harder for many microorganisms. And fat can help isolate stored food from its surroundings. None of these techniques required anyone to understand bacteria. People only had to notice patterns. Meat hanging in dry air lasted longer, food near smoke changed instead of rotting as quickly, cold food spoiled more slowly than warm food. An unopened bone protected the marrow inside. Repeat those observations for generations, and preservation stops looking like a single invention. It becomes accumulated knowledge. And that knowledge changed more than dinner. Once food could survive longer than the day it was collected, a successful hunt could help cover an unsuccessful one. Food could travel farther. Groups could spend less time guarding a carcass. High-value resources could be saved instead of consumed immediately. For people living with an uncertain next meal, preservation was a way of moving calories through time, which makes the refrigerator in your kitchen less revolutionary than it first appears. A refrigerator uses electricity to slow microbial growth. Jerky removes water. Smoked food combines drying with chemical changes at the surface. Modern packaging isolates food from the environment. The equipment is new. The basic problem is ancient. Long before anyone knew what bacteria were, humans had already learned the important part. If you can control moisture, temperature, exposure, and time, today's food does not have to be eaten today. The technology changed. The problem never did.